For more than a decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mandel. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. With Dave Minuk, with Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mandel, here for the next couple of hours to talk everything to do with the Winnipeg Jets, the NHL draft, tons going on in the hockey world, or set to commence within the hockey world. And we'll bring it all to you on this Saturday morning. I'd like to give us, all three of us, a round of applause as we basically started the show on time today. So good job to all three of us for being here on time and pressing the let's go button at the exact right opportunity. Gentlemen, good to see you both. Dave, resplendent in blue. Ezzy, handsome in white. Mindell, fiery in red.
I like it. Good morning, boys. Yeah, I mean, you're mentioning...
We're very patriotic to America right now.
I was going to say, oh, say, can you see? Hey, I can sing it.
You do have a great voice, Drew. Yeah, we got the draft. It's hard to believe, boys, that day one of the draft is coming up in 4 days, and obviously no movement for the Jets yet. But you have to think something's coming prior to the draft. We talked about this last week. I was expecting there to be a move, and then I was expecting Remis and Huss to go live and have a trade to talk about or a buyout to talk about on Winnipeg Sports Talk. By the way, Remis and Huss will be at the draft starting tomorrow, actually. I saw Remis this morning. He was walking his daughter, Sadie, and there was a little bit of a stop and chat. So shout out to Remo.
This morning. It's only
had a
9
nice
a.m.
little chat with him.
What time were you guys doing this at? It was only 9 a.m.
It was 5 after 7. So he said that Sadie was up, I think, at 6 in the morning. So we had a nice little chat. But make sure you're subscribed to Winnipeg Sports Talk, their YouTube channel, Twitter, Instagram, everything like that, because those boys will be talking to the who's who of the hockey world down in Nashville on Broadway, Drew's favorite street in America. So yeah, there's some moves coming, but it was definitely a quiet week. Aside from the Ashton Sautner contract, it's always nice to see a native of Flin Flon. Shout out to Flin Flon, as a lot of people know my dad is a Flin Flon, happy, proud Flin Flon resident, or I guess I should say he was born there. He's not a resident. He lives here, but you know what I'm saying. He's the pride of Flin Flon. But aside from the Ashton Sautner contract, boys, there wasn't a lot of news coming out of Jets land.
No, there certainly wasn't. And so I also want to make mention, you talked about the NHL draft, and Huss and Remis are going to be in Nashville. Day one coverage, round one coverage of the NHL draft Wednesday night back here on our social media platforms, starting with our YouTube channel. Dave and Ezzy will, along with special guests, will have comprehensive coverage of round one. I may or may not be there for the end of it. Likely not. So
you're not invited, Drew. We got this.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I have a family obligation, so I'll let Dave and Ezzy drive that bus, and hopefully right over me repeatedly.
We're not family, Drew. What are we?
You are
family,
close friends is what I would describe you as in the hierarchy.
Well, that's not bad.
Yeah, close friends is better than the alternative, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I was. That's a higher
you
level.
Definitely don't want to be Drew's enemy.
That's higher on the scale than I anticipated, Drew. And you know, Ezzy talks about making sure you're subscribing to the YouTube channel. And you mentioned, of course, our show on Wednesday.
Yeah.
We're 3 subs away from 5,000, folks. So if you're following along, most watch our subscribers. But let's get that number up a little bit higher. Let's get a IC up and over 5,000, because, you know, the climb to 10,000 doesn't happen until you hit 5,000. So let's get to 5,000. Then we'll worry about the next milestone. But we appreciate everyone who's joined us for this journey. And we appreciate all the new folks as well. We're not like those other companies that only appreciate their new followers and ignore their old ones. Yeah. We appreciate the old and the new. So if you can join along with us, we're going to try and have a fun Wednesday night, of course. And then on Thursday, illegalcurve.com will be your source for all the Jets news, anything that happens at the draft. I won't be at the draft, as he said, but we will have complete coverage on the website. So make sure you stay tuned to us online.
Yeah, if Kenny's water bottle and Spency Sutton and Rob Somerville, Rob Mahoney, if you guys could just create some fake Gmail accounts and then get us to 5,000, that would be much appreciated. That's how we'll do it. So maybe we'll hit 5,000 during the show today, boys.
You never know. Stranger things have happened.
Brass Bonanza wants to know if the show started early, Drew, but unfortunately, it just didn't start early. We just came on time. We were just on time.
Yes, which in that sense is kind of like early for us. But in any event, we were talking about how there still hasn't been any moves by the Winnipeg Jets when it comes to the bigger names that we've talked about all offseason thus far. It feels like it's almost death by 1,000 cuts. As Elliot Friedman, we were joking.
One big move, Drew.
Ashton Sautner.
Put on your antlers. It's time for the Minute Moose Minute on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Hang on. To channel Dave Hodge from back in the day on Hockey Night in Canada when they wouldn't show overtime.
Anyways, I'm just kidding. We're just joking around. Ashton Sautner is obviously got a one year, 2-way contract with the Jets last night or yesterday afternoon, I should say. And he's a good leadership guy. As he said, Flin Flon product. Didn't grow up in Manitoba. I think he left at around 6 or 8, but you could see after our end of season Moose availability, he was really happy to be back in Winnipeg. Spent a lot of time here. His mom is a teacher, I believe, so he came up here a lot. And he's good for the leadership, and he'll most likely be with the Moose.
And if at any point in time, no disrespect to him, but if at any point in time next season he's playing games for the Winnipeg Jets, things have gone dramatically off the rails, and the season will certainly be a bust at that point in time. Happy birthday to Pierre-Luc Dubois. It's his birthday.
I just saw that on the Jets social
very
media.
Nice of the Jets to tweet that out. I don't know if that means a trade is imminent. Maybe that'll be his birthday present, or just the Jets going through, keeping things on the up and up and wishing him a happy birthday, as they do for all the players who are still under contract to the team or on the roster of the team at the very least. But I guess it's Pierre. It's also Fête Nationale, if I'm not mistaken, Saint Jean Baptiste Day in Quebec. So everything's coming up PLD depending on his final destination. Let me ask you guys this. So, death by 1,000 cuts a little bit. No news regarding the Winnipeg Jets. They somehow haven't made any trades with regard to the big names as we sit here sort of 4 days before the draft. I think it was Elliot Friedman, and we were laughing about it in one of his many media appearances, said that he doesn't necessarily expect anything to happen until maybe draft day itself. To me, that would be later in the game than I'd expect. I would almost think something would have happened already, and still I would expect it before Wednesday and the NHL draft occurring.
Absolutely. And we've been talking about this so long, it feels like we've been talking about this for 5 years. And yeah, I think Drew and I were agreeing last week that we actually, thought there would already be a trade 7 days ago, right? So, yeah. Listening to what Elliot Friedman was saying yesterday, he expects there to be a trade in the day or two leading up to the draft or at the draft on Wednesday. As Drew mentioned, we hope everybody's going to be able to join us. Jets pick 18th overall, round 1. So that pick's probably not going to happen until when, Dave? Maybe 8:30, 9 o'clock. We know that the first round takes a long time, right? You just have to watch last year's show and see how Drew started the show, and it was bright and sunny out. And by the time the show was over, Drew was worried that an animal was going to come out and attack him in the backwoods of Kentucky. So, yeah, I'm surprised that something hasn't been done. Dave has been all over this. So shout out to Dave, for bringing all of Elliot Friedman's 135 interviews that he did this week about Pierre-Luc Dubois, Connor Hellebuck, and Blake Wheeler. But obviously, the big nugget that came out in regards to PLD, I'm sure you're going to want to get to Wheels in a second there, Drew. But the big one, Dave, is obviously that, it looks like PLD, Pat Brisson, they're going to cut it down to 2 or 3 teams. And thank God, because I'd like to know. No, I'm obviously being sarcastic. I would like him to cut it down to 1 team, because I think we're all waiting for the trade. And I think everybody knows that Montreal, LA, I'm not sure who the 3rd team would be, if that's Boston or if that's Colorado, Dave, or Dallas, or we even hear rumors that Minnesota might be interested in one of Scheifele or Dubois, right? So, you expect something to happen in the next 2 to 4 days here, or, at the draft itself, because something's got to give. You have to think that the Jets want to move on, from Dubois, prior to making their first pick on Wednesday.
Well, and you know, it's interesting because I think, you know, you mentioned all the things we've posted on illegalcurve.com, and it's true because it's a lot of posturing. You know, it really is a lot of you, and it's hard to tell, right? Like at one moment you're like, Montreal, they're basically going to not do anything. You know, unless it makes sense for them, they're not doing anything. Okay, you understand. That's coming right from Kent Hughes, and you're sitting there going, okay. And then you hear something else that, like for example, Blake Wheeler's got a lot of people who are interested in trading for him. You're like, okay, well, that's coming from Kevin Cheveldayoff. Like it's you can just see the way the machinations are working.
How the sausage is made.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, you know,
Daddy, would you like some sausage?
No, I'm good right now, but thank you.
I listened to the Friedman one from the NHL Network, and this is basically what he said in terms of the four. He said expects this will be Wheeler's last week as part of the organization. Wouldn't be surprised to see Dubois get dealt at the draft. Speculates Scheifele in Boston, but says has been quiet. Quote, they like his profile. And then talked about he kind of softened the market a little bit for Hellebuck, and then really talked about the extension and talked about how key that was. But so those are the four things that Friedman said really on the NHL Network. Still go to illegalcurve.com and listen, of course, or read my work. But anyways, the fact is that if you really want to, you know, focus in on Pierre-Luc Dubois, yeah, I mean, I guess him narrowing it down to 2 or 3 teams is a good thing. But I mean, at the end of the day, like he's already narrowed down his list. I mean, really, why Pierre-Luc Dubois has any further say in this, it kind of is a little bit bizarre to me, because when a player says, here are the 5 or 6 teams I'm willing to be dealt with, then your job as Kevin Cheveldayoff is to create a structure contract with that team, with Pierre-Luc, with what kind of assets you're going to get back. So why Pierre-Luc Dubois still has a say in narrowing it down to 2 or 3, to be honest, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Because who cares what Pierre-Luc Dubois thinks? He doesn't have a say. He doesn't have a choice. He doesn't have a no-move clause. He's an RFA.
Well, but
so I mean, again,
in the sense that he has a say, in the sense that if he's willing to sign a long-term extension with whatever team acquires
Drew, he's already made that clear by giving you the list of 5 or 6, unless it was BS. Again, I
oftentimes think it might be BS until you know.
Well, that's what I mean. So because it doesn't. I mean, again, let's just try and think logically. Remove any emotion from this. Right. If you think about it logically, if he's already given a 5 or 6 team list to the Jets that he's willing to sign an extension with, why does he need to narrow it down to 2 or 3 teams that he's willing to sign an extension with, if he was already known that he was going to sign an extension with the 5 or 6?
And it's safe to say, guys, that Chevy has already narrowed it down himself in terms of like who is really going to be his trading partner here, right, Dave? Right? Like we've talked about LA. Elliot Friedman has been all over that, right? So we believe that LA and Montreal are 2 of those 3 teams, right? And it was 2 to 3. I thought that was interesting, right? That he said 2 to 3, because as I just mentioned, we know who those 2 teams are that are the most likely destinations. And it's possible, guys, that it's a team that we haven't talked about. That's always a possibility. But I think where there's smoke, there's fire, right? It seems like LA, you know, Drew was all over this on last week's show, right? Like, because they have so many good prospects, you know, and Alex Turcotte is a guy whose name has been out there. I don't think it is Turcotte, by the way, guys. I think it's probably, if there is a trade, I mean, it's going to be Gabe Vilardi or Quinton Byfield. But, you know, I was messaging Dennis Bernstein earlier this week because I wanted to know how many games Vilardi actually played as a center, because, of course, he was drafted as a center. He's been used primarily as a winger. So Gabe Vilardi can be used as a center, but at the NHL level, the Kings have preferred him on the wing. So I just wanted to mention that, Dave, but you're right. I mean, this is no secret here that, you know, LA and Montreal are the front runners. So I'm with you. Like, I think we already know it's down to 2 to 3 teams.
Yeah, well, I mean, and it's just a matter now of when they, you know, pull the trigger on it. Does it take up until, you know, they get onto the draft floor, or is it something that happens, you know, when they all get to Nashville in the coming days? Because the NHL awards, I believe, are Tuesday night in Nashville, if I'm not mistaken. So you know that, all the general managers are going to gather and everything else, and it's going to be, you know, the gossip fest that happens when everybody gets together in one city. And is that what sort of gets things finalized over the next little while, or is it something that even takes longer? I mean, I'm a little surprised that it's taken this long, because it's not usually Kevin Cheveldayoff's, you know, previously, if you look at past history, his MO with Jacob Trouba was a couple weeks before the draft. It didn't take right up until, you know, 3 days before, the weekend before, and you know, you have to sort of all the scouts and the team has done their draft board and everything else, so they know what they like and who they like. And but if all of a sudden you end up with another first round pick, that could change things. All of a sudden, if you end up with other pieces that you didn't necessarily anticipate having, that could change things. So that's why I'm a little surprised that they're still here the Saturday before the draft, that we're still discussing Pierre-Luc Dubois. Never mind Scheifele and Hellebuck,
Right.
who both, I mean, they almost seem like they're a bit on the back burner.
Yeah, they're not
Scheifele
as pressing.
especially. That's why I'm of the opinion that I don't think, and I've, Dave and I think we both have said this for a while, that I don't necessarily expect Scheifele to be traded, this off season. But both of those guys, again, moves happen around the big tentpole events in the NHL calendar. The tentpole events are the trade deadline, the draft. When it comes to trades, if there's going to be moves happening, it's hard to believe that, Scheifele, Hellebuck, and Dubois are all going to happen in the next 3-day window. That would be, virtually unprecedented to have that many huge headline trades from one team within that short period of time, Dave.
Well, Drew, I'm still of the opinion that the only one that's going to get done in the short term, at least, is Pierre-Luc Dubois. I really do. I don't believe. I know that Elliot Friedman said he's only got a week left of Blake Wheeler. That's possible, I guess. But for me, the one that I've keyed in on and the one I've really tried to stay focused on is Pierre-Luc Dubois, because as I said with you, I think that Scheifele sticks around. I'm still not 100% on Wheeler. Hellebuck, I'm inclined to believe that they move him, but again, there's no real urgency right there. I mean, unless, again, you're trying to, depends on the kind of, what you want to do. Are you acquiring players or are you acquiring picks and prospects? Obviously, if you're acquiring picks, you want to do it ahead of a draft like this one, which is so deep. And the Dubois one.
The big thing with Hellebuck, as you know, Dave, is that whoever's acquiring him is going to have to pay big money on a long-term contract, right?
That's
So I don't think, and I might be, there might be some people that feel differently, but I think most people would agree that a team isn't interested in just acquiring him for 1 year. I think it would be safe to say that at his age and the fact that he's going to be in his prime for another 5-6 years. I think, whether it's Carolina, whether it's whoever, I mean, we've heard the New Jersey Devils out there. I mean, I just think, Dave, there's not as many teams that are willing to give him $9 to $10 million a year as there are, teams that would, be okay giving, Scheifele $7 to $8 million a year, for example. Right. So that's why I think it's holding it up, because I think the Devils make a lot of sense. But, do they want to sign him to 8 years, $80 million? Right.
Well, and that's what we were looking at with, but Kevin Weeks was talking about that on the NHL Network with Tony Granato, because they were saying that, look, the Devils would love to have Connor Hellebuck, but, can the Devils with all their contracts afford Connor Hellebuck? And that's the big question. And it seems like not if he wants, that kind of money. And it's interesting because obviously you can structure contracts in such a way that you can try and account for what the increase in the cap is going to be, because it sounds like it could, obviously this year it's only going up $1 million, but within 2 years, it could be $5 million or $6 million that have an increase. So, you also have to factor
That's still
that
not
in.
that much though. You know what I mean? Like I heard the same, report, or I was listening to Elliot talk about that as well. But like, you're talking about, one salary really. Like that's not
I understand.
a lot of money. You know what I mean?
But
like,
it gives
gone
you
up $1 million a year for how many years now? And then it's like, it's going to go up $4 million for the 24-25 season. It's like, that still pales in comparison to the NBA and other sports.
I love when people compare the NHL contracts to like Alan Walsh did that yesterday. I was like, have you seen the revenue of the NBA versus the NHL? The TV contracts, like, these things, you're just being inflammatory really. So anyways,
talk about the valuation of the Ottawa Senators selling for whatever they're going to sell for, which is, seems like a decent amount of money for the NHL. And then you look at what NBA or NFL teams are.
Have you looked at MLS, for God's sakes? Like the Miami team that just got Messi is, I think Beckham bought him for like 25 million or something like that, and now their value is through the roof. Anyways, we're not.
The NHL it's really the big three and the NHL. So when they try and pretend that there's a big four,
Well, you have players in the NBA that make $30 million a year, right? So if you just compare that one player making $30 million a year and the entire NHL team cap is $83 million. So that just shows you how much more money there is in the NBA, right?
Yeah. So bringing it back to, let's not become the Illegal Curve economics show, but I think what it comes down to is, again, we really should be focused on what's happening with Pierre-Luc Dubois, because to me, that is the big matzo ball, as we say, and that is the one that I think is, and so you really have to focus. What kind of deal are you getting? Are you getting an LA deal where you're going to swing for the fences a little bit and probably get, we all would agree, I think, your best return as a trade partner because of how deep their prospect pool is. I believe, ranked somewhere in the 5 to 7 range with all their prospects. Still a good team, of course, making the playoffs the last couple of years, but still having a very deep prospect pool.
Well, that's the thought of if you trade Quinton Byfield, then you still have like an Alex Turcotte, for example. And I realize Turcotte is maybe, as you know, Dave, he was a high draft pick, right? 5th overall, I believe.
Yeah.
In the it was either the 2020 draft or the 2021 draft. But that's kind of the thinking, right? That like you can give up a Velarde because you have Byfield and Turcotte, or you can give up Byfield because Velarde and Turcotte are still young prospects, and then you throw in like a Brandt Clark, for example, right? So the Montreal Canadiens, they have some good prospects as well. Like Caden Gooley, I think, is going to be a really good defenseman, but they just don't have the same prospect pool that the Kings do.
Well, and as Drew, I just want to quickly add to finish the thought, and I think the one team that and I had one of my guys from Twitter, and we were exchanging about it, and he said, "Well, what about Colorado on a short-term deal? If Colorado needs to, of course, shore up with the injury to Rantanen and him being unavailable for next season, so does Kevin Landeskog, sorry. So if is Kevin Cheveldayoff willing to make that deal? Now, me personally, as we know, Kevin Cheveldayoff is generally loath to deal within the division, especially to a team that is already kind of a powerhouse. It's one thing to deal with like the Chicago Blackhawks or the Minnesota Wild when they weren't any good, but it's another thing to deal with Colorado. But
I think the Nichushkin situation as well, Dave, because it's always is Nichushkin done in the NHL? Like, we have no idea with all the reporting and the incident that he got involved in. They signed him to a 6-year deal at, I think, $6 million a year, right? So with the uncertain future of Nichushkin, I think that would make you think. A lot of people aren't talking about Colorado.
No, I know,
which I think is surprising, considering losing to the Kraken in the first round, Dave, and the fact that Landeskog is going to miss the first 3 to 4 months. I think he actually might miss the whole season.
No, it's the whole season. He's done for the whole season. So I mean, and that's why, like I said, if you're it all depends on the Jets' plan, though, right? So Colorado is fine if you're not doing a sign and trade in the long term. If you need a short term option, like a Colorado or a Carolina makes sense for short term, willing to take Pierre-Luc Dubois for next year, let him walk to Montreal. That's the team's, the other team's mentality. But from a Jets perspective, you're not getting nearly as much as you would trading him to an LA with a sign and trade, or trading him even to Montreal with a sign and trade. So the fact of the matter is, to me, those are the balls that are up in the air for Kevin Cheveldayoff right now, is whether you're going to trade Pierre-Luc Dubois on a sign and trade, which obviously means you're recouping a ton of assets, or are you just doing it on a more short-term basis where a team says, look, we want a guy like that for our shot at the, Carolina. We want a shot at the Stanley Cup. Where were we lacking? Well, that would be an area we'd be lacking. Or LA Kings, to give them next year, have Kopitar, Danault, and Dubois in any configuration. So to me, that's kind of the way I look at it, is you got the big boys with the sign and trade, or if you have to do a shorter-term deal, in that regard, then you go for a Colorado where you're not worried about him hurting you for the next 7 to 8 years. You're just thinking, okay, he's next year's problem. But again, if your plan is to deal the big four, then you're taking a step.
Sign and trade, Dave, makes, I guess Dubois could be traded to a team that only signs him for 1 year. But the thing is, the Jets still need a big return, right? Like, you traded Jack Roslovic and Patrick Laine for Pierre-Luc Dubois. So regardless if you're trading him to a team that then signs him to a 7 or 8 year deal, or a team that just wants to use him for 1 year, Chevy has to get a similar return, right? Like, you have to get a really good player back, because this was a 3rd overall pick that you traded a 2nd overall pick and a 25th overall pick for.
Look, there's no question that it's a franchise.
I think Roslovic was 25th overall, something like that.
It's a franchise-defining trade. So, but what just came out, courtesy of our friends at The Athletic, I want to sort of update this. They just came out with their trade board, like they seem to be doing this on Saturdays. This is Michael Russo, Eric Dehachik, and Pierre LeBrun. So they talk about Dubois to start in the trade, or they have a big section about Dubois, and they mention really that the Kings' offer is one of Byfield or Velarde. I mean, or not, it's likely to be one of those two. And then to make the money work, because there's financial ramifications, of course. One of Alex Iafallo or Victor Arvidsson, and maybe also defenseman Sean Durzi. That seems to be what's on the table coming out of LA.
If that's the Jets, take that deal. You can get
I would take
Byfield,
that,
Iafallo, and Durzi.
One of
From what I've heard, and I mentioned Dennis Bernstein talked about this, that LA is not interested in trading Durzi. He's a guy they want to, and they have him under contract, right? I think for at least one more year.
Yeah, he's under contract.
But we'll see. Then you're throwing in who are you throwing in? From the Jets, because it's not just going to be Pierre-Luc Dubois for Quinton Byfield and Victor Arvidsson and Sean Durzi or whoever else.
If that's the case, holy moly!
There's got to be somebody. It's got to be Ville Heinola or somebody else going back the other way.
Here's the quote. I'll read you the quote.
Hold on, Drew. Just before you read the quote, all I'm going to say is plan the parade for Kevin Cheveldayoff if he can get that kind of return from the game.
Also, LA is throwing in Luc Robitaille and Marcel Dion as well.
The question is whether the Kings would be prepared to put Quinton Byfield in a deal as the primary piece going Winnipeg's way, or whether the Jets would be more interested in Gabe Vilardi, who is a more established NHLer, a player with average speed but good hands, who scored 23 goals in 63 games last year. To make the money work,
by far, that was the most full year he's played. So I would be just a little bit reticent to use the word established when it comes to Gabe Vilardi. He's only 22 years old.
To make the money work, the Kings would probably need to shed one more contract. Alex Iafallo or Victor Arvidsson, and maybe Sean Durzi as well. So maybe, that very well could be Chevy feeding these guys information to put in their article. I mean, it's all posturing, and these guys are the mouthpieces for the posturing, but they're, anyways, coming out this morning. That's on The Athletic. And as well, here's the latest on Connor Hellebuyck, Mark Scheifele, and Blake Wheeler. Connor Hellebuck's next contract will not come in Winnipeg, blah, blah, blah. We know that. The Devils, one team showing interest is New Jersey, but it all depends on the price of a new contract.
So what you're saying is there's absolutely no news.
No news on that one. Yes, the Devils are a progressive front office that just saw unheralded Adin Hill win the Cup with Vegas. Some don't love the idea of spending big money on a goalie. They may be willing to do the deal without an extension, but that would lessen the package the Jets would get back. Mm-hmm. Then with regard to Blake Wheeler, he's looking for a change of scenery, and agent Matt Keeter is working with the Jets on this one. There are three options: an outright trade, not easy considering he's 36 years old and making $8.25 million, a trade to a team that would then buy him out, or the Jets themselves buying him out by the 5 p.m. Eastern deadline on June 30th. So that sort of second wrinkle there about a trade to a different team that would buy him out is an interesting one. I've heard that recently, but notice that they don't say anything about the Jets trading him and retaining any salary there. Still an option, but that doesn't come up in that paragraph.
Okay, let's go back.
Hang on, one more, and then we got Kelly Moore coming, so we can discuss this with Kelly and then after Kelly. Mark Scheifele is also entering the last year of his contract and could be on the move.
Yes, I didn't know that.
The sense, at least right now, is that the Jets aren't getting as many offers as they anticipated for the 30-year-old coming off a career high 42-goal season. So there you go. That's maybe that the Scheifele sweepstakes isn't necessarily generating as many entries as the Jets would like, or the Jets had hoped.
Back to Gabe Vilardi here. Gabe Vilardi actually, I said
the only news thing was the Kings.
Gabe Vilardi turns 24 in August, but the point is that last year was his career year, and he's only played about 100 NHL games. So that's what I was talking about when you're talking about established. Like, I just wouldn't say Vilardi is as established himself as much as Pierre-Luc Dubois has at 25 years old. I just wanted to get that point clear. But I think, going back to what we were talking about before, Quinton Byfield or Gabe Vilardi make the most sense as the centerpiece in a trade for Pierre-Luc Dubois. Then maybe, you start throwing in guys like Victor Arvidsson or Alex Iafallo, and then the Jets have to throw in a defenseman to go with Dubois. But that's the intriguing one for me.
Yes, let's go to break. Kelly Moore of CJOB Sports is up next. Much more to come Saturday morning. We are live with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Saturday morning, we're live on our YouTube channel, all of our social media platforms, talking about the Winnipeg Jets. And pleased to welcome to the program the game night host for the Winnipeg Jets on our friends at 680 CJOB. He's also the sports director there, making his show debut. Our good friend Kelly Moore joined.
It took so long, Kelly. I've been pushing to have you on the show for years now.
Yeah, I know, but Manuk, he keeps every time he comes to a Jets availability, just be patient, son. Just be patient. The time will come.
Kelly,
Great to
good
be on with
morning.
you,
Nice
fellas.
of you to join us. How are things?
You know what? I'm sitting out in my backyard, having a coffee, talking hockey with the Illegal Curve boys. If I was to complain, people would say, "Why?"
That's very nice of you to say, but people would also justifiably under the first two things are very pleasant. It's the third thing that maybe brings things down a little bit. I would understand.
And
But
Drew, we have to
nonetheless-
congratulate Kelly because Kelly's daughter recently got married, so we have to start the show off with that, right?
Yeah. Actually, and I was going to come on with you guys that weekend, but I thought, okay, Illegal Curve boys, or my wife and my daughters being upset with me forever. So you guys finished a distant second on that one.
Understandably so in that situation, but we're thrilled that you're able to join us this morning to talk about the Winnipeg Jets. And we're in crunch time. Some people may have said that we've already been in crunch time, but we're 4 days away from the NHL draft coming up on Wednesday. Kelly, are you surprised that we sit here on this Saturday morning and really nothing has occurred with regard to Scheifele, Dubois, Hellebuyck, and Wheeler, at least on the official sense, that all four are still members of the Winnipeg Jets organization?
Yeah, I think it's very important to clarify nothing, that resembles finality on that, because I don't know about you fellas, but I don't ever get invited to Kevin Cheveldayoff's war room. So, I'm not intimately in on all of the phone calls that he must be taking and making right now, for those four players you just mentioned. And the only one I'm a little bit surprised on is Pierre-Luc Dubois. I thought perhaps something might be done by now on that front. And I think conventional wisdom says that something should be done by the draft if draft picks are something that the Winnipeg Jets think would be helpful in making that trade. I know I heard you guys talking about some of the names from the Los Angeles Kings that you would expect the Winnipeg Jets would come back in that part of the trade. But you can also use draft collateral to go after some other pieces. I mentioned it earlier this week on CJOB. You have teams around there, and it's no secret. The Tampa Bays and the Boston Bruins. They're in salary cap. Can I say hell on this show?
Oh yeah,
Yep.
you can curse
Perfect.
as much as you want.
Well, let's face it. They have extreme salary cap difficulties, and they have a couple of restricted free agents who they'd love to re-sign, but I just don't see how they'll be able to do that. So, you can't make a contract for contract trade with those teams. But, if you could pick up a few pieces as far as draft picks are concerned from some of these deals the Jets are going to make, parlay them into some of these restricted free agents, you could still strengthen your club that way. And, and again, fellas, I want to caution, this is just me having way too much spare time and going through, different salary cap scenarios for hockey clubs and that. But so examples, these are not rumors, these are examples.
Kelly Moore reporting.
Yeah, but let's say if the Winnipeg Jets were interested in a player like Ross Colton, who's shown some upward trajectory during his 3 years with the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's one of those players that fits into the category of, man, we'd love to keep you, but we just simply don't know how. So, you wouldn't likely be able to trade a player for Ross Colton unless it was maybe a real value added type contract. But obviously, I think Tampa Bay would love to recoup some of what they traded to Nashville for Tanner Jeannot. So now you turn some of the draft picks that you've accrued from your trades into a useful piece for the Winnipeg Jets, and Tampa Bay gets something back that they want. And again, that's just simply an example.
Yeah, and when you're talking about speculation, I mean that's all we've been doing, right? Because that's all you can do when you're not sure who's getting moved first and which team is involved, right? We think it's going to be Montreal or LA when it comes to Dubois and Kelly.
Right.
I think to stick with that idea of certain teams being in salary cap HE double hockey sticks, right? Because there's a lot of teams. I mean, you can put the Toronto Maple Leafs like right at the top of that list, right? The Edmonton Oilers have been there. there's a lot of teams that, just can't make unlimited moves, right? And I wanted to ask you specifically about Connor Hellebuck and Mark Scheifele, because as you know, the Scheifele trade rumors have been much less quiet than the Hellebuck and the Dubois trade rumors. And then obviously, it was reported by Elliot Friedman and others earlier this week that it looks like it's going to be a buyout or a trade for Blake Wheeler. But the question is, how likely do you think it is that we see Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuck start the season with the Jets and then maybe be moved, prior to next year's trade deadline, considering, that all these teams have, all these salary cap issues and might not be able to make the trades this summer?
Well, I think what Kevin Cheveldayoff will do there, as he is take a look at what he would get now for either one of those players compared to what he thinks he might get when teams pay rather astronomical sums at the trade deadline. But it's also more difficult to make trades for players of that caliber at that time of the year. Even though, the salary cap issues might not be as difficult to navigate around as they would be at the start of the year. But I think you're really onto something. I think it might be difficult for Connor Hellebuck to be traded if he's really stuck on that $9 to $9.5 million mark for a long-term contract. Because we've heard all the stories. Yes, New Jersey would love to have a guy like Hellebuck between the pipes, but their budget just simply doesn't accommodate paying $9 to $9.5 million for a starting netminder, even though he's a guy with a proven track record, who can play 60 to 65 games for you at a very high level. So I think that, and then with Mark Scheifele, if you're the Winnipeg Jets, I don't really know where they sit on the finality of are things over. And I think what could be really intriguing for Mark Scheifele is if he was to say start the year here, depending on the pieces the Jets get. And conventional wisdom would tell you that when you're a hockey club making as many changes as we anticipate the Jets will, because it's not just the big four. You also have 5 unrestricted free agents. How many of them are going to get re-signed, if any? So, now all of a sudden you're talking about almost half of your lineup being turned over. And so there's not going to be any instant chemistry, however important that might be. But if it did all come together and all of a sudden, the optics of where the Winnipeg Jets are in February or March are much different from a positive aspect than what they are right now, who knows? Maybe a player's attitude changes. So, Mark Scheifele is kind of a gray area. Connor Hellebuck and Pierre-Luc Dubois and Blake Wheeler are certainly more definite on where they sit with the hockey club.
Well, and Kelly, we tend to focus on those big four for a reason. They're the ones who are making all the news. But the Jets have some questions on defense and what they're going to do in that regard, because they've got a number of young guys coming up or who want to come up. Ville Heinola, unfortunately for him, still waiver exempt next season, but a guy like Declan Chisholm, who's no longer waiver exempt, and he's champing at the bit to get into the NHL and become an NHL regular. But you don't want to have a Johnny Kovacevic situation where you lose a guy and he goes and plays 65 games with another organization. So what do you think is going to happen there? Because I think it's a little bit less discussed is the fact that the Jets have to make some room. And of course, Dylan Sandberg, we know he's going to be an everyday NHLer with the Jets, but what do you do with Logan Stanley? So again, it's funny how many, this is the biggest summer I would suspect, because it's not just those top guys who may have not been perceived as an issue, but now you've also got all these other issues, smaller end on the back end.
Yeah, well, I think for sure when you take a look at it from a restricted free agent point of view, it would be shocking if neither Morgan Barron or Dylan Sandberg weren't part of the Winnipeg Jets in the fall. I think those guys are pieces that this club views as very valuable in going forward. Logan Stanley, though, could be one of those value-added contracts, if you will, that could be included in a deal. So then that opens up a spot for a Ville Heinola or a Declan Chisholm. But the one thing that you fall into a bit of a trap door with is, size and grit wise, you still have Brendan Dillon. You still have Dylan Sandberg, who I think is going to really grow from his experience at the World Hockey Championship tournament. So you're bringing in another Neil Pionk, Josh Morrissey, to a certain degree, Dylan DeMello type. Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a big risk if you're not going to keep Declan Chisholm, if anything. And I know as much as Kyle Capobianco would come in and play and do the necessary things for you in a pinch. But I think I'd be a little bit more tempted, especially because he's going into the final year of his contract this year, to maybe if you're going to take a chance on a player getting claimed on waivers, maybe let him try to slip him through the cracks rather than risking losing a Declan Chisholm. It's make or break year for Ville Heinola, both for the player and I think for the organization. If you don't know now what Ville Heinola is going to bring to your hockey club, when will you ever know? So I think Ville's going to still. It's on his shoulders to get the job done in training camp in the preseason, and I think he's going to see a lot of action. And so there has to be a decision made there if he's still around, because you'd have to think when all these trade talks are taking place that Ville Heinola is part of a lot of conversations.
Kelly Moore, game night host for the Winnipeg Jets, is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. You know Kelly is the sports director of 680 CJOB here in Winnipeg. Kelly, given the tenor of how the season ended last year, with Rick Bowness saying A and the players coming back hard and saying B, and there clearly being a divide between their perception, do you think that it's going to be difficult for them to bridge that divide with the upcoming start of the season? Or do you think that the turnover in the locker room, turnover in the dressing room will sort of assist with making things a little bit more copacetic between coach and players?
Well, I'm going to sound like my wise old guy playing checkers on the park bench here. But, how many occasions have you guys had in your lives, whether it was with your parents or an uncle or brother, whatever, angry words are spoken, opposing views are expressed, and then, once the anger or the emotions have died down, you talk it out and you move on.
Time heals all wounds.
Yeah, and so I think let's face it. It's great for us in the media, but one of the difficult challenges for hockey clubs is that season is over. Exit availability day, also known as garbage bag day, comes on the heels of the most disappointing time of the year. Either A, you didn't make the playoffs, or B, you got punted out of the playoffs. So emotions were running pretty high. I really don't think that it's going to be that difficult for everything to start fresh in training camp. I would suspect that those telephone calls and conversations have already been had even since all of that took place back in late April. But, the one thing I would disagree with, and it's simply my opinion, I don't say it's wrong, I just disagree with it. I don't think there was a player revolt. I don't think Blake Wheeler led a player revolt. Blake Wheeler was asked a question, and he responded to it honestly. He shared his feelings, on how he perceived Rick Bowness's post-game comments. And let's face it, I know you guys were doing a post-game show that night. Trevor Kidd was on with me, and our jaws dropped. And I've been around for a few years. I've never, ever heard anything like what Rick Bowness expressed in that 57 seconds. So, from that perspective, I wasn't surprised that the players reacted the way that they did. I was disappointed, though, that, after saying, I don't like what Rick Bowness said, he should have talked to us first, there should have been a but, considering how we played, we probably deserved that. And, so that was the part from in every player. I don't remember one player, saying that, the coach was probably valid in the long run. He just didn't need to express it publicly. But I think that we may still talk about it, and certainly it'll be the fans that'll talk about it. And then, it all comes down to the hockey club. If they struggle, then there's going to be this perceived carryover. Right. If they play well, then, they got over it.
So we talked about earlier, Kelly, that, we're expecting Blake Wheeler to be bought out or traded to another team that's going to buy him out, or traded to another team that he's going to play for next year. And I wanted to ask you about the legacy of Blake Wheeler, because, say whatever you want about Blake Wheeler over the last 2 to 4 years, but this is a guy who, served as captain of the team. He's been a member of the Jets 2.0 for every single minute that they've been here. And, especially when you go back to that 2017-18 run, Wheeler was obviously a huge part of it, along with, Dustin Byfuglien and Jacob Trouba and many others that are still on the Jets. But for you, kind of what stands out to you about his time as a Jet, not just, the last few years, as I mentioned, but, over the last 12 years, because he's obviously been, an integral part of the core.
Well, one of the things that Blake Wheeler did, and it's even before this current contract that runs its course at the end of this season, but when he re-upped for that other contract where he was getting $5.6 million, I think, on the average annual value, he Andrew Ladd, and Dustin Byfuglien, and I think you can put Brian Little into that category as well. They were the front runners in setting the groundwork for players to commit to this franchise long term. And everybody, and I'm as guilty of this as anyone. I take a look at what has happened to Blake Wheeler over the first 4 years of this $41.25 million contract, and the start of that contract has almost coincided with the leveling off of Blake Wheeler's impact as one of the marquee players in the National Hockey League. But let's put ourselves for a second into the skates of Blake Wheeler, and for those previous 4 or 5 years when he was making $5.6 million. Man, I'll tell you what, he was one of the most underpaid players in the league, putting together back-to-back 90-point seasons, and while others were getting paid $3 or $4 million a year more and not even coming close to that. So I think if you average it out for the course of his career, Blake Wheeler has given great value to this Winnipeg Jets franchise. It's just unfortunate, and it happens a lot, that last big payday seems to come when the player just isn't able to maintain that high standard that he's had. But Dave, I know you've been in media scrums, Ezzy and Drew. I don't know how many you've been in where you put a mic in front of the face of Blake Wheeler.
Kelly, I'm a journalism grad. Okay, I took Crecom. I've been in a lot of scrums. Drew, okay. we only wake up Drew for the important meetings.
Okay,
but I've been at the victim's end of a Blake Wheeler withering comment in my day. So yes, I know where you're going with this, and yes.
Yeah. So I mean, he has not been, Mr. Warm and Cuddly with the media. But I'll tell you what, Blake Wheeler has given a lot to this community, and a lot of it we never see because he prefers to do it under the radar. There are times where the hockey club, wants to feature him in some of their digital content, and I'm thinking that he probably would prefer that not to be the case. He'd just like to do what he does, on his own. But he's great with the fans. He really is. And he and his wife, Samantha, and their family have given a lot to this community. So, I'm not trying to brush over, some of the things that have been said and done, because I don't know if Blake ever looks back on it and say, maybe I should have done it this way, or maybe I should have reacted in a different way. But the one thing Blake Wheeler does, he gives you his honest answer, and sometimes honesty isn't always, a comfortable thing for someone on the other end. But I think when Blake Wheeler looks back, and I agree with what he said in his availability at the end of this past season, and that is, he came to work and gave everything he could. Like, there was an 8-year stretch there, guys, where he missed something like 6 games. 2 of them were because the coach decided, it's the end of the season, we've wrapped up a playoff spot, let's give you a bit of a rest here. And then the other 4 were injury related. But for how hard he played, how many minutes he played, that was phenomenal durability. And of course, it's well documented how he's been able to manage pain. And one of the things he said, and I think it was during his availability before playing his 1,000th game, and that was, you can play through pain, but you can't play through an injury. And I've been very fortunate just to have been able to have to play through pain. But again, that's the other part of Father Time that is caught up. I think, what is it? I'm trying to remember, 26 games, I think, that he's missed in the last 3 years, whether it was COVID or an assortment of injuries, compared to the 6 over 8 seasons previous to that.
When you think about it, though, Kelly, he ruptured a testicle last year and somehow only
Oh.
missed 10 games. The rest of us would be still on the IR for the rest of our lives.
Oh.
But you're absolutely right when it comes to.
Yeah,
Dominic
I'd be
Jackson.
sitting here gingerly on my couch. Even just the mere mention of that makes me squirm.
Sorry, Kelly. I promised you yesterday that Drew wasn't going to say ruptured testicle, but
Yeah.
obviously,
Yes, that was one of the
That's right.
disclosures of this interview. No,
No, that was in your contract.
yeah,
Kelly Moore is our guest here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Saturday morning, we're live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms.
Now, Kelly, I'm not sure if you've ever played any net in your life, but you may need to next season because the Jets could be without Connor Hellebuck. They
Yeah.
could, if they're lucky, be without David Rittich. And so the reality is Oskari Salminen, Arvid Holm, I watched them obviously a lot with the Moose last season, but we know obviously the Jets are going to have to go out potentially. We don't know what's going to happen with Connor Hellebuck, but potentially and get someone who's going to back him up. But what do you see happening there? Because in theory, do you see, and Ezzy's mentioned this before, it's not entirely, it doesn't have to necessarily be a goalie for goalie trade. It could be Scheifele for a goalie or Dubois for a goalie. It could be that you're replacing one with the other. But of course, you're not going to trade Dubois because you're most likely that'll be the first domino to fall. But what do you see happening in net? Because, it's not necessarily clear that the guys in the AHL are ready to necessarily jump into that backup role. And you potentially could have two spaces to fill. And we know as much as everybody likes Dominic DiVincentis, the seventh rounder from 2022, the OHL goalie of the year, he's still a ways away from being a ways away.
yeah, exactly. Because you remember when Connor Hellebuck was drafted in 2012, he didn't get to the NHL till 2016. So even if you put Dominic DiVincentis on that kind of a timeline, we're talking 2026, 2027. So yeah, let's see how he percolates in his last year of junior, and then maybe in a couple of years of minor pro. It's very interesting because every Monday I do a Jets report on CJOB, and I had this script written up about what were the Jets going to do about a backup netminder. This is before all the news came out about Connor Hellebuck. And so this has never gone to air, so I'm kind of sharing this. I hope my employers don't get too upset with me. But, I posed the question, did Oskari Salminen do enough in the playoff run against Milwaukee to at least get on the radar of being a capable backup? But that was based on Connor Hellebuck being here. Mm-hmm. So, let's face it, I don't believe that the Winnipeg Jets are going to go into the 2023-24 season with Oskari Salminen and Arvid Holm as their tandem. And the saving grace, I think, for Winnipeg is this particular free agent class of 2023 is not particularly deep, except for goaltending options. And it's still early. And you always think, Kelly McCrimmon and George McPhee get their man in Vegas. But I wonder if, Adin Hill is going to take a look at what he accomplished in the playoffs and parlay that into going to work for another organization. And we don't know what's happening with Robin Lehner. If Lehner has to come off of LTIR, then, that impacts Adin Hill for getting the kind of money that he has earned with how he played in the postseason. So, between Adin Hill, I don't know where Tristan Jarry is sitting right now with the Pittsburgh Penguins, but there are options out there.
Antti Ranta, right? Freddie Anderson.
Yeah, the only thing with those guys, though, Ezzy, is can they stay healthy? And how much are they a product of that incredible defensive system of the Carolina Hurricane?
Good point, yeah.
I was thinking, though, Peter Kvechkov, if Carolina ever entered into discussions with the Winnipeg Jets on Connor Hellebuck, I don't think they are, but if they did, if Kevin Cheveldayoff would able to maybe get Carolina to part with Kvechkov, I don't think they will. I think he's seen as the goaltender of the future.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly, we know he can score goals. We saw it here against the Manitoba Moose.
Exactly, yeah. So, he'd help out with the offense. But so I think that, if there was ever a year for your goaltending situation to be clouded, I think this might not be a bad time to have that happen. And the other part of it, too, is let's say if Connor Hellebuck is traded to the New Jersey Devils, well, young Schmidt, I mean, we've seen a really, really small sample size with him. And then, once everybody got a bit of a book on him, then all of a sudden the goals against started to go up in that Carolina series. And Mackenzie Blackwood, again, great potential, but has had difficulty trying to stay healthy. So, in that regard, I don't know if either one of those goaltenders would fit into what the Winnipeg Jets need. But I would think that with the dollars that are going to be available through these deals, if they're done by July the 1st, and that's where I think everybody is suspecting that the Jets will buy out Blake Wheeler to create that extra cap space so that they're in the hunt, for some of these UFA goaltenders. But the other tricky part to that is, okay, so you sign a UFA goaltender, but you haven't traded Connor Hellebuck yet. Now you're into the $11 to $12 million range, that's tied up between the pipes.
Kelly, last question for you. We've touched on Hellebuck. We've touched on Wheeler. We've touched on Dubois. Not a lot of talk about Mark Scheifele.
Mm-hmm.
If you were putting on your prognostication hat, does Scheifele start the season with the Winnipeg Jets, or do you still see him being dealt between now and training camp?
I would say that the chances are better that he starts the year with the Winnipeg Jets than not, for a number of reasons. The priorities clearly are the first three names that you mentioned. They have to be dealt with. There's only so many hours in a day for Kevin Cheveldayoff. And let's face it, there are only so many potential landing spots for these marquee players because the Winnipeg Jets aren't the only team that are looking to offload. You guys know what's going on in Calgary. Philadelphia is trying to have a fire sale. Daniel Briere kind of set the tone for that. So, it's not just Winnipeg. It's, some other teams that are looking to maybe move some pretty significant pieces as well. There's only so many places that those players can wind up. So, and the other part to that too is it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to be traded. To at least give yourself a fighting chance, I think you have to have a player who's perceived to be a number one center in your lineup. So for all of those reasons, I think Mark Scheifele will start the year. I would not be nearly as confident as telling you guys that he will end the year with an extension and continue on as a Winnipeg Jet.
Kelly Moore is the game night host of Jets broadcasts on our friends 680 CJOB and, of course, Power 97. Kelly, a great debut performance. We'll have to do it again real soon because you now have set the bar for yourself and you're going to have to keep exceeding it show after show, appearance after appearance.
You'll know I'm a gamer that if I'm sitting in this same location and coming on a show in December or January.
That's right. That's what we want to see. We want to see you outside, and it better not be a green screen. We better see the leaves on those trees and everything like that. Kelly, thank you. Have a great rest of your weekend. Congratulations on your daughter's wedding, and we'll do it again real soon.
You bet. Thanks so much, fellas.
Thanks
so much, Kelly.
Kelly Moore, CJOB 68, 680 CJOB.
I was going to ask Kelly if
Sports.
there's any wedding cake left over, but I thought it's been 2 weeks. All the cake's probably gone, right?
Probably, yeah, exactly. Yeah. You don't need any more of that cake. I think you're good on the cake front there, Mr. Ginsburg. Let's go to break. When we come back,
I'm obese, Drew? Is that
no,
what
I'm not saying that. I'm saying I'm confident you've had cake already this week.
I had cake this morning.
There you go. Exactly what I was confident about. Much more Jets talk to come when we return. The Flames fire sale appears to be getting underway. How does that impact potentially a Winnipeg Jets multiple of moves in this offseason?
Apparently, Harvey the Hound has no intention of re-signing with the Calgary
Harvey the
Flames.
Hound's out too. Yeah. Hopefully, we can keep our hands on Mickey Moose and Benny, though. We don't want to see it become a full-scale teardown. Much more to come. Craig Button with NHL draft talk at the bottom of the hour. Stay tuned. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, that was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rollies and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Boston Pizza harnessed Fanalytics to help optimize no-look dipping. Ooh, making adjustments so you can stay focused on the game. The playoffs at Boston Pizza, powered by Fanalytics.
Hour number 2 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. It rolls on this Saturday morning. We have some breaking news. Dave M., why don't you announce the breaking news?
No. I mean, I did already in the chat so everyone knows, but for the folks listening on the podcast, if you're downloading the podcast and you're thinking, I should also subscribe to the show, we have a new goal. We hit 5,000 during this show, so we appreciate the 4 or 5 new subscribers that we've just received. Yeah. But now our new goal is 6,000. So let's get us to 6,000 as soon as we can, and we'll keep that climb going for IC Nation. So
5,000 boys. Mazel tov to us. That's a big number.
We're back down to 4,999. I've had enough.
Well, Drew, I don't want to question numbers, but we're at 5,00001.
Damn it!
If you
does YouTube send us anything? Like, are we going to get a plaque or like a banner or something?
I might create like a little fake plaque that'll, like, even though, because I think it's 100,000 is the milestone, but I'll just create like a little. I'll get someone to create a little YouTube one. It'll be 5K.
Guys, Kenny's water bottle actually just unsubscribed, so we're back down to 4,999.
All right. Well, anyways, the point is that when we started, we weren't, remember back in the day, this YouTube was our only social media. We had a channel. We never really used it. In fact, I think the only thing we'd ever posted on here, Ezzy, was the sacking video, which actually, little known fact, and I don't want to go too far off the beaten path because we'll talk about that for 25 minutes, but that actually restarted illegalcurve.com because we had mothballed illegalcurve.com for a bit. And then the sacking video got the juices flowing for everybody.
Do you remember what those kids, the best is like for those who used to listen to us on TSN 1290, we actually had those kids on.
Yeah.
Like they were like in high school at the time. I don't know if you remember their names, Dave. But I remember Richie was on for that show. I think Drew might have been away for that show, but Remus.
There's no way Drew would not have taken part of that.
Never have let that get put on air under my
point is,
the best is they came on. It was Metric, right? If I'm not mistaken, he was playing when the
That's the reason why I was watching, Ezzy. That's why I was watching it, because I like Metric.
Was them breaking it down, Dave. He was like, "Yeah, I just thought I was going to sack my friend," and like we actually did a 10-minute radio segment on the sacker and the sacky and the video and
the radio station no longer exists. Although in our defense, that would have worked well on Funny 1290. That could have been good for Funny 1290.
The point of the story was we had very few, and then during the COVID year when we started to build this channel up a little bit, we got it up to a decent number, and then you guys have really made it fantastic. So our thanks to everyone who's helped Illegal Curve get to 5K, and we're looking forward to hitting some next new totals coming soon. So we appreciate everybody subscribing. Thank you.
There you go. Well done. So before we went to break, and that was a great interview with Kelly Moore. Big thanks to him for joining us this morning. I mentioned the Calgary Flames situation because Frank Saravelli basically in a series of tweets, it was either yesterday or 2 days ago, just eviscerated the Flames organization and their hopes and dreams of re-signing a number of their key players, which sounds oddly familiar to what we're experiencing here in Winnipeg. He mentioned Noah Hannafin. He mentioned who else did Frank
who didn't he mention?
Yeah, Noah Hannafin.
We're talking about Elias Lindholm, Drew. We're talking
Elias
about Tyler
Lindholm, Michael
Toffoli.
Backlund.
Yeah, Michael Backlund has played he's a first round pick of the Flames. He spent his whole career with the Flames organization.
Tyler
Backlund to me
Toffoli,
was very surprising. Backlund's a good two-way center, but yeah, when you're talking about Toffoli, I mean Lindholm guys, I mean, wouldn't Lindholm look good, on the Winnipeg Jets? Like, I don't know if your minds went there. I don't know if there's necessarily a fit there with a trade, because it seems like Calgary isn't on, Dubois' list of teams that he wants to go to. And I'm not sure with Jacob Markstrom there, if Hellebuck makes a lot of sense. But if you think about it, the Flames are in a very similar position with the Jets, in that they have many players who are unhappy with their current situation and might be moved before the draft starts on Wednesday.
As we call that the Atlanta curse.
Well, there you go. That's actually well done, Dave. That's a good point. So my question for you guys is, Craig Conroy appears to, he's a rookie general manager there in Calgary now, but he's now facing
and mention Iggy, because Jerome McGinley is the special advisor. Well. Yep.
Yeah.
Conroy and Iggy.
So, he's facing an interesting situation here where he's almost being forced to also rebuild this Flames team on the fly. Do you expect that what's happening in Calgary might end up having some impact on the Winnipeg Jets? That the Jets, were in a good position in that we know the UFA market is pretty terrible, and the Jets had all these assets that were available in trade. But now there's another team in Calgary that's got a whole bunch of quality assets that might be available in trade, and say a team that if the Jets were using some leverage, saying, hey, there's only so many good guys available and I have a lot of them. Well, here's another team that's got more players that are now available on the trade market, and could see some teams pivoting towards the Flames and away from the Jets. I mean, it's
absolutely. Yeah. And it starts with Elias Lindholm for me, boys. Like, Elias Lindholm, I believe he's making $4.5 million a year with 1 year left.
4.85, but close enough. Yeah.
Yeah. And, a couple of years ago was Elias Lindholm's breakout year. I believe he had 42 goals that year, 80 plus points, right? So Lindholm directly impacts the trade market, right? Because you're talking about centers, right? Scheifele, Dubois, Lindholm. So I think, what you're, kind of getting at, Drew, is more so not a trade involving the Jets and Flames, just how now, things are being clouded, right? And then you throw in like a guy like Ryan O'Reilly, right? Who might end up, re-signing with the Leafs, but he's obviously kind of the prized free agent, right? Guys, we've talked about it. Like, when you're talking about guys like Dmitry Orlov or Tyler Bertuzzi, right, Dave? Like, the names that are out there. It's not a very strong UFA class, right? So in that sense, yeah, I mean, like, if you're, I don't know, a team like Boston, let's say, right? We believe Patrice Bergeron isn't coming back. Yeah, it hasn't been announced officially. And then, is David Krejci back, right? Because, like, you're talking about a team in the Bruins who, you lose those two really key players up the middle, then now you're going to be in the market. So, like, when I thought of Elias Lindholm, I'm thinking, what about Boston? Like, they would like Lindholm is a really good player. I mentioned it, right? Like, a couple of years ago, he was a point per game player. His numbers, I'm just looking now, he had 64 points in 80 games. But needless to say,
doesn't he seem way more like a Boston kind of player than Mark Scheifele? Because we've heard Mark Scheifele's name a little bit mentioned.
Lindholm's a much
Boston
better
Bruins
defensive center, right? And the thing is, yeah, I mean, look at, I mean, his salary, he's underpaid Lindholm, and Scheifele, I would argue, is as well. But when you're talking about Lindholm for $4.8 million, guys, like, to me, he's like a $7.5 to $8 million a year player, right? When you consider that, as we mentioned, he hit 40 goals a couple of years ago, right? So, it's unfortunate that Craig Conroy and Jerome McGinley are starting off in this situation, right? Like, it's not an enviable position to be in, right, Dave? Like, Noah Hannafin is a good defenseman. He's still, what is he, 29, 30 years old? Like, he's still got a lot of good years left. So you've got to think there's going to be a lot of teams interested in Hannafin and Lindholm and Tyler Toffoli, like, right? Toffoli's got the cup experience, the Stanley Cups. He's a guy that can score goals. So, I mean, yeah, it looks like Craig Conroy is going to be, making some moves in the coming days and weeks.
I can also see Conroy, Dave, being far more aggressive and being far more definitive with his actions and his moves than Kevin Cheveldayoff is. We know how Kevin Cheveldayoff likes to play the long game, and he likes to drag it out, and he likes to make sure that every I is dotted 3 times and every T is crossed 3 times before finally making his move. I wonder if that paralysis by analysis could end up costing the Winnipeg Jets and seeing another team pivot to Calgary now. That would be a concern, I think, that wasn't necessarily there 48 or 72 hours ago when it didn't appear as though the Flames were going to have to be going through a very similar situation to what the Jets are going through.
I'll be honest with you, Drew. I'm just trying to figure out what word Kevin Cheveldayoff is spelling with I and T on the contract. That's my bigger concern right now. I'm trying to figure, is it Brexit? Is it shit? Who knows what word it is?
Is that the end of your joke, or are you going to answer my question?
No, I mean, look,
because boy, that wasn't a great one. That was not your best material. I got to tell you, Dave.
I thought it was okay. I could have gotten it. I was expecting a bit of.
I mean, there's a lot of words that have an I and a T in them.
I was expecting more of a high course ha. You didn't get
you weren't getting a ha from me on that one.
All right, that's fine.
Stick with sacking videos. That's your forte.
Juvenile humor is generally more my area of expertise, for sure. Anyways, look, I think it's certainly possible that Craig Conroy, who is probably, I think I'm even saying, the most well-liked guy. I don't think I've ever not seen him smile. He's always got a big smile.
Nicest guy
across his face.
And a great hockey player as well.
Yeah, and we've seen him here in Winnipeg, and when he was, I guess he was in the AGM, or and you could just see he's just nice. He's always talking and that sort of thing. Not that has anything to do with anything, but yeah, look, I could see him being aggressive because Calgary has to figure out, they're kind of in that mushy middle, right? You've got a goaltender in Markstrom who just is inexplicable given how good he was in Vancouver, how good he had been in Calgary to start, that you expected him to be that lights out, and then the lights went out with Jacob Markstrom, unfortunately for him, and he just hasn't had that confidence that he seemed to have had. And obviously they've got in what's Dustin Wolf with the Wranglers, that he's kind of the goalie of the future potentially there in Calgary. And obviously this is, I don't want Spency to start accusing us of being doing Flames lunch right now, but I think it is interesting. And I think the focus, bringing it back to Winnipeg, will be what does Kevin Cheveldayoff have to get done? And ultimately, again, I keep coming back to this idea that I really think that folks are hearing four names and are all four going to be back, and it sounds great, and you can make it on it. To be honest with you, some of the banners I've read and some of the headlines are so stupid and ridiculous that you're reading them and you're like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And the truth is, again, I would just caution Jets fans. This is my own sort of analysis, if you will, of the situation. I don't think that you're necessarily going to see a mass exodus of the top four of those four players. I really think Dubois, 100%. That's the Ginsburg guarantee I'm giving you. But other than Pierre-Luc Dubois, I'm not quite as aggressive in my assertion that you're going to see those other three moves. So,
and Wheeler, right? Like based on the reports, right? Like Mike McIntyre.
I appreciate the reports.
Come on, Dave. It's not looking good for Wheeler.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying otherwise.
Sticking with the Jets is what I'm saying. It might be looking good for Wheeler in terms of going to another team, but I mean, everything Dave is pointing to a buyout or a trade.
Sure. Hey, as sometimes you got to be the contrary son, and I'm going to be the contrary son on this one. And I don't disagree with what Kelly said. You in the heat of the moment, things get said. Can time heal wounds, and can guys I'll get back on the same page and kumbaya? I believe that is the case. And again, I'm not suggesting that Blake Wheeler, Mark Scheifele, and Connor Hellebuck are all going to be Jets to start the preseason schedule, which, if you haven't seen it, is on illegalcurve.com. 6 games, Ottawa, 2 against Ottawa, 2 against Calgary, and 2 against Edmonton. For those who get excited about preseason, that would not be the Illegal Curve hockey show. We will not be doing post-game shows for the preseason. As an FYI, we won't be starting our post-game till sometime in middle October. But I really think the focus needs to be where it is, which is on Pierre-Luc Dubois, and what sort of assets you're going to get. And so that to me is ultimately the biggest question mark for the Jets. What happened in Calgary, I agree, Drew, plays a role in the sense that it makes the market, it makes you less diverse. And there are other players now
who are looking
to deal for sure. And that's unfortunate. So that is why if you're Kevin Cheveldayoff, you really need to address the one thing you need to address right now, which is Pierre-Luc Dubois has told you he's not going to sign a contract. He's not even going to sign his qualifying offer. Mm-hmm. So the reality is that if you're the Winnipeg Jets, that's the only thing you need to focus on. Connor Hellebuck has a contract, Mark Scheifele has a contract, and Blake Wheeler has a contract. So those three guys are not imperative. And I've already said on this show that if you want to recoup draft assets for this team next year, this is the draft to do that. So that could increase that. But again, as I've already said, Pierre-Luc Dubois is the guy you've got to be focused on. And Ezzy, if those returns, and that to me is what we should have been talking about, if the returns are even close to what the guys in the Athletic are reporting, and if that's not, as Drew just said, posturing, if you can get Jersey, if you can get Byfield, and you can get Iafallo for Pierre-Luc Dubois and Logan Stanley, I'm sorry, you're doing that trade every day of the week.
You should have completed that trade already, is what you're saying. And I agree with you. I mean, at a point in time, and I know that, look, general managers, especially Kevin Cheveldayoff, subscribe to deadline hunting. And we've talked about deadline hunting on this show for very many years, that, things often don't happen until you get closer to the deadline when your hand is forced. Kevin Cheveldayoff often seems to be one of those general managers. Well, I mean, if that offer is on the table, then there's no reason not to jump at that offer. I don't know that it's going to get any better than that. I don't know that LA is so desperate that they're going to insist that, that they're going to sweeten that offer, especially now where there are alternatives, theoretically, for them to pivot in another direction, where they could maybe look at somebody else, that maybe, Pierre-Luc Dubois isn't the only center option out there for them to go in and tweak their lineup.
There's nobody like Pierre-Luc Dubois, though, available. He's a rare player. We've talked about it, right? Like the power forward.
But if Elias Lindholm costs you a fraction of what Pierre-Luc Dubois does, and I know that they're not apples to apples.
He wouldn't, though, Drew, because Lindholm is a better player than Dubois.
Well, but at his age, you think it's going to cost them more than what they're offering, what they're allegedly have on the market for Pierre-Luc Dubois?
Yeah. I mean, if you're asking me who I think is a better player, offensively and defensively, it's Elias Lindholm.
Right. Okay. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I would say that the biggest appeal for Dubois, or the feather in Dubois' cap in that comparison, would be his youth compared to Lindholm, but it's not substantial. It's only about,
how old is Lindholm? 27, 28?
28.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're talking about a guy who's in the prime of his career, right? Or maybe not. I mean, I think we've talked about this before. I mean, forwards' best numbers are usually between kind of 23 and 28. But regardless, I mean, Dubois hasn't scored 42 goals and 82 points, right? Like, Lindholm is a great player. But so all I'm saying is, yeah, like if LA can go with Kopitar, Deneau, and Lindholm up the middle, I mean, guys, that's the best center depth 1, 2, 3 in the entire league, right? So yeah, I mean, Lindholm is an option, I guess, for LA, but you're going to have to look. We've talked about this. LA, because of their cap situation, is going to have to give up most likely more than just Gabe Vilardi or Quinton Byfield. That's why, Dave mentioned Alex Iafallo and Victor Arvidsson are the two guys, right? But just getting away
from one of the two. Sure,
getting away from the fixation on LA. I disagree with Dave. Like, a lot has changed. A month ago, I would have said that, for sure Dubois, and then the other three are question marks, Dave. But with the reporting, I mean, Dubois and Wheeler are not playing for the Jets next year. I think you guys would agree with that. And then with Hellebuck, if he doesn't want to sign long-term, I mean, it's just a matter of time. You only have two options. You trade him now, or you trade him prior to the trade deadline. And for me, like, I don't think that's a situation you want to be in, where you're moving. Like, if the Jets are in the second wildcard spot come next February, then you're going to trade Connor Hellebuck at the trade deadline. So I think, the only guy right now that I'm leaning towards being a part of the Jets next year is Scheifele.
Yeah, I mean,
and he might be traded too.
Well, I mean, like I said, the Athletic says the Jets aren't getting the offers that they would expect for Scheifele, and I'm not surprised by that. I mean, you can't, even if you score 40 goals, which he did this year, 42. Yeah, teams don't want to pay a huge price for a one-trick pony, even if the one trick that the pony does is the hardest trick to pull off. He needed to show some level of commitment on the defensive end that he's never shown in his career. And, teams know this. Teams, I mean, again, we've talked about this. The NHL is the worst high school in the world when it comes to gossip. If a player is a problem, or if a player doesn't have the give a bleep factor on the defensive end of things, some teams, are really going to have a hard time overlooking that. Rod Brind'Amour and the Carolina Hurricanes have an identity. That identity starts in their own zone. It starts with, defensive responsibility. The Boston Bruins have a similar identity. that's why Mark Scheifele I know that he can score goals and I know teams want that, but you're not going to upend your team's philosophy and your team's identity for that. He's not that superior of a talent that everything else that he does is worth overlooking.
Yeah, true. But I mean, I think the hope would be that if he goes to first of all, it's kind of like any of these guys. They're no longer the big dogs. If they go to a new team, they have to adapt. They don't get to be Mark Scheifele, the guy who's been, the first draft pick of the Winnipeg Jets and essentially gets to run the room the way he wants it. He has to go there and he basically has to be with no voice and adapt or die, right? And so the reality is, if you're going to go play in Boston or if you're going to go play in Carolina, I don't care if you're 30 years old, you're basically a rookie to them. And again, Carolina's a perennial contender and Boston's a champion. So you're going to have to listen to those guys. You're going to have to, keep quiet and listen. And one of the things that I said, at the end of the season with Mark Scheifele, I said it at some point, I don't remember when exactly, but one of the things we talked about was Mark Scheifele needs to transit. We talked about him. Steve Yzerman's his favorite player, right? Yeah. And what did Steve Yzerman do?
Right.
Steve Yzerman transitioned from being offensively gifted and focused to transitioning to being able to be a two-way player. And that is what Mark Scheifele has to do to be a champion. And we've talked about it. And I said this. I said he's better off going and learning from Bergeron and Kopitar this summer than he is working on skills with Adam Oates.
But if he only listens to Adam Oates, if Adam Oates is his rabbi and the only person that he cares about impressing or improving with is Adam Oates, I mean, that's what Adam Oates is. Adam Oates is only...
Is Adam Oates Jewish?
No, I don't think he is, but maybe he is. I can't say one way or another, but Adam Oates is...
He's a member of the all-food team.
He's singularly focused on getting a player's numbers higher.
So what I would say then, Drew, is what he'll do is get Mark Scheifele the next big contract that he needs to get. And then the question is, once Mark Scheifele has his $10 million contract, $9 million contract, whatever the number is going to be.
Sure.
He's got that contract in hand. It's a 8-year deal, 7-year deal, whatever the number is, doesn't matter. The point is, that's when I think you see Mark Scheifele change. I really do. I think that right now in Mark Scheifele's head, he needs to score. He wants to earn that big contract. Once he's earned that contract, again, we're going to have to wait a bit, Ezzy, to see if my words are true or if they ring hollow. But I suspect that if Scheifele gets the big contract, I think you see him change his game, because at that point, then he goes to legacy and wants to win a Stanley Cup.
One of the teams that we've heard might be interested in Dubois, but to me would work with Scheifele is the New York Rangers, right? Like, I agree with Drew, right? Like, could Rod Brind'Amour, who, by the way, we haven't mentioned the Hall of Fame yet. Congratulations to everybody who was nominated, but I do think Rod Brind'Amour should be in the Hall of Fame, but that's an aside.
At any point in time, sorry, Ezzy, you got me on a tangent here, but at any point in time when you watched Mike Vernon play goalie, did you think that's a Hall of Fame goaltender?
I will, after meeting him in the Calgary airport, Drew, I will not let you
met him in the airport.
I will not let you besmirch Mike Vernon's Hall
Stanley
of Fame
Cup winner with the Calgary Flames and the Detroit Red Wings. Well, okay, like, if you wanted to go quickly,
I saw Mike Vernon getting, like, Mike Vernon's been eligible since what year? Since like 1996 or some ridiculous, like it's taken him 20 years to get in there. And I'm like, Mike Vernon, is that a typo? What happened there?
Well, there's a few things. I mean, Patrick Elias should be a Hall of Famer. Alex McGillney should be a Hall of Famer. And shout out to Winnipeg's Jennifer Botterill. More than one woman should be getting it every year. I'm in that camp that believes it should be 2 women every year, considering how many men are in. And I'm not being woke, so nobody can accuse me of that. Jennifer Botterill should absolutely be in the Hall of Fame. I will continue to say that. We've had her on the show before. She does great work with Sportsnet CBC. She should be in the Hall of Fame. But when you're
Jeremy
talking
Roenick.
about and Jeremy Roenick, I was going to say, we all have the pleasure. Monday is being at I thought what Jeremy Roenick said, talking to Rabbi Matt Leibel. I think Leibel did a great job, by the way, with Belfour, Chelios, and Roenick. And so thanks again to Zach Manuk and the entire team at the Rady JCC dinner. We had a great time. I've been really enjoying my signed Nick Schmaltz jersey that I bid $250 on. I think it's going to look.
What was Naomi's reaction when you came home with the Nick Schmaltz jersey and said that you spent $250 on it?
I have an important question. Ezzy, you were the only bid at 200. How did he get to 250?
No, it was 250.
I'm very confused.
It was 250. That was the starting bid, was 250.
I'm pretty sure it was 200. I think you.
No,
I actually think
I paid 250. I mean,
I was
they
gonna
told
say,
me-
I'm
I
pretty
went up
sure-
to pay for it, and I'm pretty sure it was 250. But Naomi had no idea that he was even gone. So I mean,
I'm 99% sure, Drew, that it was actually listed as 200, and Drew, as he actually increased the
against
bid,
himself?
yeah,
yeah,
I
he
gave
did
an
against
hey, it's a
himself.
great cause to give money to Rady JCC. They do
Fair
an amazing job there, right? But yeah, Naomi, she thought it was funny. I mean, it was actually Remus who told me to bid on a random player. So I thought Nick Schmaltz, good UND boy, good American.
Member of the All
forward.
Food team.
Yeah, a member of the all food team. You know how much I love my schmaltz, right? But I forget what we were talking about aside from the Hall of Fame guys. I completely lost my train of thought.
Doesn't matter. Let's go to break because Craig is about
let's
to
just bring
join
Craig
us.
on.
Okay, we're gonna okay. We'll bring Craig on. We'll forego the break and we'll bring Craig Button on right now. There he is, looking as handsome as ever. Our good friend from TSN, Craig Button, joins us on the show now. Craig, good morning. How are you?
I'm good, and I was going to make darn sure I wasn't missing my allotted time slot today on this Saturday after absolutely botching it last Saturday. So thanks for having me. Always a pleasure. And hey, we're into that time of the year where there's a lot of fun, and a lot of like what could happen going on. So I was happy to join you guys.
Well, our pleasure that you're able to join us. Craig, and you're right. It is sort of the silly season when it comes to the NHL with all the trades, free agency rapidly approaching, and of course the draft coming up on Wednesday in Nashville. And that's where we want to start with you and the draft. We know that Connor Bedard is going first overall. There's no question about that. And then you in your most recent mock draft, that's where, the headline is the fun starts after number 1. But the player I want to ask you about isn't the guy you have going number 2. It's Matei Michkov out of the KHL, because he's probably, I would say, the biggest wild card in the draft. In terms of his talent, it's impressive, but yet you have him going at 4 to San Jose. What's the risk reward when it comes to a player like Michkov?
I'm really not sure, Drew, if there's a risk. I'm really not sure there is. I mean, I've said this often. You can talk yourself out of any player you want to talk yourself out of. I've seen it for years. He's not big enough. Oh, look at where he's from. Oh, he's got a contract. So if you want to go down that path, it's really easy to talk yourself out of a player. But in the case of Matvei Michkov, and the reason I say that is he's a talented player. And where do you find these types of players? And when you start to consider, the timeline with the contract, 21 years of age is what he'll be when he comes over to the NHL. Well, most players are going to be 21 before they're ready to come in and maybe they play a year before, but to make an impact, that's where they're going to be age-wise. Now, you look at a talented player, you try to look at what your timeline may be and your patience level, and then you get a player coming in at 21 on an entry-level contract that could be elite productivity. I don't see risk there. I see reward. And what's interesting now, obviously we know that there hasn't been anybody outside of Russia that's been able to watch him live, but he's been seen lots live in previous years. And because of the pandemic, video scouting became a lot more comfortable for everybody. And the video you're getting and out of the KHL and out of Russia has been outstanding. So you make your decisions based on that and based on he's got a long runway of being watched. This isn't something like, oh, did you hear about this kid, this talent? He's been watched and he's been dominant. So when I look at it and just say, hey, I could make a case for him to go 2. I can make a case for him to go 2. I think Fantilli and Carlson are really good top on players. And I put Will Smith in that category of 4 players right after Bedard. But I don't think, again, he's going to get drafted relatively early. And I think that, again, the team's going to be excited. You're going to probably hear terms like, wow, we just couldn't pass up that kind of skill. We're not worried about his contract, when he comes, all those things you're going to hear. And it's interesting to me now hearing some of this stuff. Wow, his personality. Oh, yeah, all this stuff. It's, it's just amazing like the rumor mill, how it starts, and people feeding it all off. I mean, I get it, I understand it, but to me, he's an elite striker. I call him an elite striker.
Craig, we talked about Connor Bedard, Adam Fantilli. You mentioned, Leo Carlson. These guys are going to be, top 5 picks. But as you know, the Jets don't pick until 18th overall. A couple of years ago, we had you on the show. That's when the Jets took Chaz Lucius. And of course, you had another couple forwards being drafted by the Jets last year with Rutger McGroarty and Brad Lambert. And obviously, we've been, focused on your rankings, Bob McKenzie's rankings, and there's a lot of good forwards that are options there. Like last week, we talked about Braden Yager, guys like Nate Danielson, Oliver Moore. I look at your last Craig's list, and there's a lot of Swedish defensemen there. And obviously, we're playing speculation station here, but when you're talking about a guy like Axel Sandin Palika, or you're talking about a Tom Willander, like, I guess what stands out to you about those guys, and do you see those guys being available at 18th overall for the Jets?
Yeah, I don't see Sandin Pellikka being there. I could see a case where Willander is there, but they're two different types of players. Number one, they're both right shot defenders. The biggest thing for me, Ezra, is that watching them over 18 months, their progression has been so significant. And that's, you're not just going to watch a player and say, oh, he played good, therefore he's good, or he didn't play good. You're watching the development and the progression of these players over time. And, Sandin Pellikka, he showed some really good elements. He's so poised with the puck, understands where the puck needs to go, how to alleviate pressure in the defensive zone, how to make plays in the offensive zone. It took me a little bit of time to come up with a comparable, but the more I comparable type, the more I watched them, I kept getting flashbacks to Sergei Zubov. And then, I said, Craig, be careful. Zuby's a Hall of Famer. I was lucky to when I was in Dallas, he was there and he was brilliant. And but that's the type of game. There's not a lot of flash and dash to Sandin Pellikka, but you go back in time and you watch him over that period of time. I mean, at the World Junior in Halifax, he was a 17-year-old defenseman that had the most minutes, the most time on ice per game of any defenseman on Sweden. Like, you're going, wait a sec, 17. Then you go watch him again. You watch him just continue to take the game and just control the game. And that's the type of defenseman I see him as. That great with the puck, great poise. He goes as fast as he needs to go. And, it's not going to show up on the highlight reels, but it's going to be really effective for your team. Willander is a little bit more robust. He's got a little bit more of an edge to him. I've compared him in terms of his style of play, kind of a cross between Rasmus Anderson and Charlie McAvoy. And, he's confident in his game. He's hard in his game. And he, like Sandin Pellikka, and it's interesting how they're tied together being Swedish, tied together being right shot defenders. But Tommy Willander really took another step in his game when Sandin Pellikka was away at the World Junior camp and then Tommy Willander became the number one guy. Anders Eriksson, not the former player, but the coach, he said to me, he goes, Tommy didn't know how good he could be. He was kind of always, behind Sandin Pellikka, but he needed to be that guy to take a step ahead. And what Anders said, he goes, now that he sees it, he goes, we're going to keep encouraging him to be that guy. And I think that you confidence and everything that goes with it. But he's a little bit bigger and a little bit more robust. And I think in that regard, but those types of defensemen to me are hard to find. They're hard to find. The intelligence, the competitiveness, the puck play. And so when you factor it all in, and not a lot of what I would call top 3 defenders in the draft. For me, I see that at the top end, I'm going through 25. I see 3 guys: Reinbacher, the Austrian, and then the 2 Swedes. So if there's a defender there and you want him, I think you're going to have to take him. And that's why it might be a little bit of a stretch for any one of those 3 to be there at 18. But, as you when I did the mock draft, I mean, that's really just a fun exercise. Who could fit where, you're using a lot of different things to do it. But at the end of the day, I don't see those 3 guys being available at 18. Now that could change. What I will say is this: the depth of this draft is so good through 2025 that if he's there, that's fine. Or if you have a choice that, but there's lots of good players that are going to be available. The Jets are going to have to make a choice. It's not like, oh, we'll just take the last guy standing. They're going to have to, it's going to come down to them making a choice between really good players.
Well, and Craig, going to the forward side of things with that 18th pick, if the Jets go that way, I know you have them going to a program they're a little familiar with Oliver Moore I think you called him a speed demon, or his speed to burn when you were on TSN the other day. So maybe talk about him a little bit so Jets fans can get an insight into what kind of player he is, and maybe one or two other forwards you could see in that realm that maybe the Jets would end up selecting.
Yeah, well, so let's start with Oliver. So that national team development program, the progression they made over the last 18 months, again, as U17 players, they were good. You could see that there was talent there, but they literally took right off. But I call it the 4-2-9 line. That was Perreault, Will Smith, and Ryan Leonard. It's the best line I saw outside the NHL this year. Best line. They were unbelievable. Now, Oliver didn't have the benefit of having a lot of skill on his wings. And so he was asked to do a lot of different things in the game, and he did them really, really well. When he did end up getting some skill on his wings, his offense really took off. And I think you got to keep that in mind when you look at the numbers for him offensively. So you've seen a player that can contribute in all areas of the game. You've also seen a player that really saw a push in his offensive productivity when he had better offensive players around him. And I think that bodes really well for Oliver Moore going forward. But that speed that he possesses is disruptive. It's not comfortable for opponents when he's out on the ice. It's really unsettling because he's so quick, he's so fast, and he's powerful. He's powerful. So, it's not just like a little nudge is going to set him. First of all, you got to get close enough to him to give him a nudge, right? And even if you give him a nudge, it's not going to deter him. It's not going to knock him awry. He's that good. And he uses it so many different areas of the game, like, to create turnovers, to put pressure on, to force bad plays. He's a great penalty killer, and he's competitive. Like he moves the needle competitively. Like what's interesting, I compared him to Dylan Larkin in terms of his style, and that's who Oliver compares himself to as well, which is always interesting. When I say type of player, it's always interesting. I mean, I get it. Some players go, oh, I'd like to be like Crosby. Okay, but your game isn't Crosby, right? But when a player says, yeah, I see my game like Dylan Larkin, you go, yeah, that's where he's at. And I think a big part of these players, any young player, is coming to an understanding of what your game is. And they've all been good offensively, but sometimes your game has to change a little bit as you move up the ladder. And I think for any player, the sooner you understand what your game is, I think the better it is for you to just zero in and focus in on those areas of your game that will allow you to be a really productive NHL player.
Craig Button's our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, talking about the upcoming NHL draft. Wednesday night is round 1. Live coverage back here on our YouTube channel, of course, as usual. Craig, between Adam Fantilli and Leo Carlsson, is there a lot separating the two of them, or is it really a matter of beauty in the eye of the beholder for who a particular team prefers at number 2?
I think you nailed it, Drew. It's what you prefer. Adam is a hard driving, fast, competitive, hungry, determined offensive player. I mean, he's attacking. He's got attack on his mind, and he plays at such a frenetic pace that becomes really difficult because you not only do you have to handle the speed, then you got to handle the size, and then you got to handle that deep competitive determination, and he's got that. He's got his mind. I'm going to the net. I'm driving at you. He doesn't deal with, I'm going to be handling the puck here and circling there and everything. He knows where he wants to go when he goes there. And with that size and determination, he's hard to handle. He's a hungry goal scorer. Leo Carlsson is more of a playmaker. He's rounded out his game a little bit more with respect to shooting more, but I mean, a big playmaking center. And I know that Leo's looked at himself a little bit like Barkov. I see him more like Nicholas Backstrom of the Washington Capitals. And so when I look at Leo, if you got really good scoring wingers, Leo Carlson is going to be the center that gets you the puck. When the puck's on his stick, he understands where the best opportunities are, and then he can execute on them. And so when I had him going to Columbus, it's like, what's going to get, like, Patrick Laine has the ability to be a 50-goal scorer. Alexander Ovechkin had Nick Backstrom. I think Leo Carlson playing with Patrick Laine sets him up to be a big, to enhance his goal scoring ability. And Fantilli, just the way he plays, and a little bit like McKinnon, and with respect to the way it's driving, he's a driving force. Two different types of players, But for me, when you look at both of them and you look at what they offer, frontline players, productive players, competitive players, and so it just depends what you're looking for and what you want. Now, one team's going to have to make a choice between the two. And once one of them is off the board, then you might be making a choice between the one and somebody else. But somebody's going to have to make a choice between Fantilli and Carlson, and it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds.
Craig, I'm sticking with Sweden. I was asking you about defensemen earlier. I wanted to ask you about Otto Stenberg, because he's a guy that I'll be honest, I didn't know a lot about. And then I've been reading up on him. I know a lot of Jets fans, just because you have him ranked right around there. And then actually we should mention in your mock draft, he was taken right before, and I realize this is all fun. So, I mean, I'm not holding you to,
if you're one wins. Pick off, Craig, you're going to hear about it. Let me tell you.
Absolutely. We're going to have you on after the draft, Craig, to completely tear apart your mock draft. But no, Otto Stenberg.
We have the tar over here and the feathers over here. And we're just ready to put them together.
But I think a lot of Jets fans, he's a winger. We should mention that. He's not the biggest guy. I think he's at 5'11" or 6 feet. But he's a guy, I think, that when you read his scouting report, he's got the shot, he's got the speed. And then I think a lot of Jets fans like the fact that he's kind of got that little bit of an agitator role. He's not afraid to get his nose dirty a little bit. So what stands out to you about Stenberg, who's obviously, we're expecting to go in the first round, and there's a good chance it's going to be in the top 20?
Yeah, well, I'm a little bit scared because just over Drew's shoulder, I can see the tar heating up. It's getting hotter and hotter, so I'm afraid about how that's going to feel. But Otto he's been the captain of that 2005 born group in Sweden, so that speaks right there to his leadership ability. I think he's a hard driving winger. He's got the skill, he's got the speed, he's got an excellent shot. But to your point, Ezra, he's got an edge to him. He's hard. Like you think about competitive players and how important they are to winning at critical times. I'm not talking about winning at critical times. And there's times during the regular season that it's critical. It's not just playoff time. And Otto is that player, and he plays the game with a real understanding of what his skills are, and then how to work it into the game with whoever he's playing with. Like, he's fast, but he doesn't know, he understands I don't always have to go fast. He sets up to shoot the puck, but he knows he can make plays. He's a really good penalty killer as well. Another player that's a really good penalty killer. When I did the mock draft and I did Detroit, they drafted some centers. They got some defensemen, and trying to get some, just a little bit heavier, skilled, harder players. That's why I had them taking Colby Barlow and Otto Stenberg. Kind of, if that's their mandate, or if that's what they're focusing on, those are two guys that I think. That's why I do the mock draft based on that, because I think I'm listening to, this is what we're looking for, so that's where I try to make a fit there. But Otto Stenberg's like it's interesting because over the course of time, he played at the U18 in April of 2022, and Sweden won the U18 championship. He was a younger player, but he played. Then, at the Halinka, and then, at the different tournaments over time, and I think in the league, he struggled a little bit, like trying to find a way. But I would say probably in the February on, he really asserted himself. And internationally, he's always played very, very well in his age group against, the better competition. I see a really, really good player. And when you ask me about players, well, if he's there at 18, let's say he's there at 18 and Moore's there at 18 and Callum Ritchie's there at 18 and, maybe Samuel Honzik's there at 18. That's what I mean about having to make a decision. it would be easy to just say, oh, well, like they're all in a group. They're all, in my view, really, really good players. They all add different things, in terms of their skill set, but really, really good players. And, as you go through the evaluation and try to understand what fits for us and what we would really like, it's not that you're dismissing good players. You're just saying, this is our preference here. Tonight I'm having steak instead of chicken, and you know what, however you want to assess it. But I think they're going to have more than ample opportunity. Let me say one more thing here. Just, we talk about depth in the draft. Here's how I define the quality of this draft. And people say it's deep. And I think I look at it and I go 20, 21, 22 deep, maybe through to 25, top 2 line forwards and top 3 defensemen. Rarely do I see that. Rarely do you see that type of quality, that deeper into the draft. And so people ask me, do you think Danielson will be there at 16? Because I had him going to Calgary. I said, I don't know. But if he isn't, you're going to have another good player to pick from, a group of good players to pick from. That's a good thing. A lot of times, and I joke about this, and Dennis Patterson, I worked alongside for a number of years, longtime chief scout with the Philadelphia Flyers, he always used to say, he used to joke, he goes, oh, it's funny how teams are. If you're picking 11, the scouts start to go, yeah, there's only about 9 good players. Like if you're picking 9, there's only 7 good players. Nobody's going to get away in the top 25 this year saying there's only 20 good players. There's a lot of quality in this draft, deep, deep, deep.
Well, Craig, speaking of depth, I remember in 2014, we were riding the bus in Philly, going from the hotel to the arena. And even though we were at the 2014 draft, everybody was talking about the 2015 draft. It was focus was already on. I heard scouts talking, because that's kind of the nice thing is everybody's riding the bus, media, scouts, management, whatever it is. So you kind of get, assessments. And I remember Ezzy and I were sitting there and we're like, everybody, how are they already talking the 15 draft? We're in 14, but there was so much excitement. And this year, it felt like everybody has been so excited about the depth of the 23 draft. And so that's what I want to get to, is that idea of depth. And, the Jets have found some diamonds in the rough. Speaking of 2015, Mason Appleton in the 6th round. Of course, Connor Hellebuck in the 5th round. Andrew Kopp in the 4th round. Now, those guys are the exception to the general rule. But for you, what are some players that are maybe not those top 2 rounds, but could potentially be diamonds in the rough for an organization?
Yeah, when you ask that question, David, I try to assess the players in the top part of it, right? And a lot of players, and what are diamonds in the rough? Diamonds in the rough are players that are, probably haven't grown, aren't physically mature, still have lots of development ahead of them with respect to their abilities to really show. And I've even said this about players, when you start talking about, why didn't he get drafted? Well, sometimes players aren't ready to be drafted. They haven't shown enough to be drafted. And that's not a knock. That's just a case of where the players find themselves at that point in time in terms of maturity. But, so where do I head? So, I go to different places. It's easy to go to the smaller forward and say, well, that's where there could be a diamond in the rough. And certainly we've seen lots of evidence of that. But, I'll give you a name. And he played for Erie. He played for the U.S. national team at the U18 turn, Carey Terrance. Now, Carey Terrance is an excellent skater. And, Erie wasn't a good team, but when he got with the USA team at the U18, you could really, really see a lot of ability, a lot of understanding of how his speed can have even a greater impact in the game. And, he's somebody that's a little bit raw still, and it's going to take a little bit of time. But when you skate like that, and then you show that understanding as you move up a level at the U18, I think that becomes something that's really, really important. Do you want me to go to a local Winnipeg kid now? Sure. And Jaden Perron? I mean, he had a really strong season with the Chicago Steel. Really strong season with the Chicago Steel. He needs years to just physically mature and to get stronger and to get. But when you look at him and you look at the thinking and you look at how he handles the power play and you look at how he handles offensive situations with really good players, if you're ready to be patient, and I think you need to be patient with a player like that, then down the road you could end up with a really, really top-notch player, like somebody that can play on in your probably your top six, play on the power play, give you some offense, and those are things you're always looking for. And you just park those guys and let them just go and do what they need to do. And there's like, I think about, like, you're looking for a goaltender. Like, I don't know where the size thing is going now. I mean, you look at what Dustin Wolf has done. When we're seeing other goaltenders that maybe not the tallest of goaltenders, but have a lot of ability. And so is Scott Ratzlaff a guy? He's a darn good goaltender. He played behind Thomas Milic in Seattle. You're looking at somebody that is going to be a frontline player for Seattle in the next few years. He should be a player that's going to be in full consideration for the World Junior team in Canada, and he's got a lot of those abilities. Again, you just look at him; he's about 6'1" now, but the abilities are really, really strong. But you just got to be patient with those abilities. Help them grow, help them get better. And I think that down the road, then you can find players that really, really have an opportunity to find their way to the NHL. One other player that I would mention, and it's interesting just as time goes on, is Tyler Peddle. Now, Tyler is from the Atlantic Province, has played in Drummondville. This guy has unbelievable speed. Unbelievable speed. Drummondville was a team that was okay, but not great. But, if I'm going to take a chance on somebody in the third, fourth round, it's on guys that have those skill sets that already scream NHL. I know there's parts of his game that have to be worked on, but that speed is dynamic. And he's shown a real panache for being able to score. So, those are just a few of the names that I mentioned deeper down the draft list, so to speak, but certainly players that I think have NHL potential.
Just quickly, Peter Woods of Hockey Manitoba is going to like the Jaden Perron reference. Craig, former Winnipeg Bruin U18 AAA, just wanted to mention too, he's going to go to UND. So if the Jets are able to draft him, won't have to travel long, about an hour and a half down the street to North Dakota to go watch him. But I just wanted to get that, and I appreciate the plug for Hockey Manitoba.
You made the plug for Hockey Manitoba. It was your own plug, is what you're saying.
Yeah, but Craig mentioned him, so it's always good to get the the Winnipeg kid in. He's really talented, as Craig mentioned. He's a few years away from cracking the NHL, but he's a really good player.
Ezra, I know what platform I'm on. I didn't bring up Jaden Perron just because I like his skill. I know where he's from.
Craig, that's it. You're off the hook on the tar and the feathering. I'm giving that to Ginsburg instead. You're in the clear now, Craig. Craig Button is TSN's director of scouting. The NHL draft goes Wednesday live, round one coverage back here on our YouTube channel. Craig, appreciate your time, appreciate your insight. Thanks always for doing this.
Oh, yeah, my pleasure. And it's going to be an exciting time, not just the draft, but everything leading up to the draft and then free agency. I think there's lots of things going on. It's interesting. You got lots of stuff going on in Winnipeg, and now the Calgary Flames are kind of facing very similar circumstances. So, a lot of interest with those two Western Canadian teams.
Absolutely. We've talked about it for the last couple hours, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about it for days on end. Craig, appreciate your time. Thanks for doing this morning.
Thanks.
Let's head to break.
Cheers,
when
Craig.
we come back, one final segment on this Saturday morning. You're watching the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Talk about a fun show that has absolutely flown by. That has been this morning's show with so much to talk about, like a jet plane taking off. That's what this show was like this morning. Want to say a big thank you to all of our sponsors, our friends at Rady JCC. A great dinner on
That was so much fun.
Terrific opportunity here from Ed Belfour, Jeremy Roenick, Chris Chelios.
Roenick's Dominic Hasek accent was priceless.
Yes, Roenick doing an impression on Hasek was terrific.
And the Patrick Waugh one was pretty funny when he was making fun of the Waugh. Like he was, I don't know, people don't love his personality. Yeah. I think I remember, in fact, just to harken back about 10 years ago, I remember I wrote something for a little site called illegalcurve.com.
Never heard
talking
of it.
talking about the NBA and the NHL and how the NHL had the most boring shows to watch.
Yeah.
And the NBA, like Inside the NBA is the best sports show. I don't even watch basketball games. I watch Inside the NBA because they are so good. Ernie, Kenny the Jet, even Shaq, who I didn't love initially, but I enjoy now, and Sir Charles. They are the best sports show. It's not even close. They're so good. And hockey has nothing like that. And I like Roenick. Tells stories. He's honest. People don't like it, but
how good was it when Roenick was talking about how him and Michael Jordan used to gamble on golf and how they were big degenerates, and then obviously the story involving Devin Setaguchi and Tori Mitchell. If you haven't heard that story, we don't have time to go over it. Just YouTube Spitting Chicklets, Jeremy Roenick, Devin Setaguchi, Tori Mitchell. There was a funny prank that he played on them when they were a member of the Sharks. And obviously Belfort and Chelios, 2 Hall of Famers. It was just, we talked about the sports auction. It's just it's a night that we look forward to every year.
Exactly. It was a great time Monday night. So big thanks to our friends at the Rady JCC for having us on board as one of the sponsors. Also, our friends at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club. Tonight is final night in town. 2 shows. Derek Gaines. If you've watched the new show Bupkiss, if you've had an opportunity to see that, it's Pete Davidson's new show. Derek plays one of Pete Davidson's friends on that show. He's one of Pete Davidson's friends in real life. So he's at Rumors tonight. If you have an opportunity to go down and check him out, he's great.
And he's, of course, the brother of Chris Gaines, a.k.a. Garth Brooks.
Thank you, Ezzy. Linden Market Dental Center, Zappia Group Realty, Betway, Tough Duck, Boston Pizza, Seagram's, Rolly's Transfer, Grid Park, and The Keg support all of these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. Reminder, special round 1 coverage of the NHL draft coming up on Wednesday night, so you can be sure to keep it locked here to our YouTube channel, live coverage of the round 1 of the NHL draft. And at some point in time in the next couple of days, we're expecting some trades to happen for the Winnipeg Jets. We will be covering that in its entirety if and when it happens. IllegalCurve.com, plus the potential for pop-up shows here on the YouTube channel. Stay tuned to all of our social media for the latest regarding all of that. A big thanks
Drew,
to
I'll
all
be popping
of you.
up on your front lawn.
I don't know what you just said, but it's fine. A big thanks to all of you for subscribing and supporting the show. Hit 5,000 subs earlier today on the program.
5,002.
There you go. Keep smashing the like button. Keep subscribing. Tell your friends, tell your family. The best place to be Saturday morning and after each and every Winnipeg Jets game is the Illegal Curve YouTube channel. We want you to leave us feedback on YouTube, leave us feedback on iTunes, leave us feedback here, there, and everywhere. Just like Dave is mimicking their writing a script out or leaving some feedback, do that. Twinkle Toes, Twinkle Fingers Minuk over there is doing a great job. Big thanks to all of you. Big thanks to Dave. Big thanks to Ezra. Big thanks to Kelly Moore of CJLB. Big thanks to Craig Button of TSN for joining us. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We'll see you on Wednesday for round 1 coverage of the NHL draft. Have a great weekend, everyone. We'll see you again real soon.
Thanks for listening to this broadcast from Illegal Curve Hockey. For more great Illegal Curve content, subscribe to the Illegal Curve YouTube channel, follow at Illegal Curve on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and visit your online home for hockey in Winnipeg, IllegalCurve.com.